Well, that's another Super Rugby Pacific round in the bag, and round 8 delivered a bunch of really telling results as well as really exciting games. We're going to go through them quickly, and we're going to wrap them up, and then we're going to do some analysis. And this week, it's going to be looking at the Force versus the Highlanders, and it was a great way to round out the weekend. And before we go on into the video, I'd just like to say that if you have the time to subscribe or like the video and comment, I'd really like to be down there in the comments with you, talking about the games, talking about the review, talking about what's coming up. And then it also helps me if you subscribe and like the video, for then me to continue to grow the channel and to be able to produce more content for rugby lovers like you. But without further ado, let's get straight into the round review. We're going back all the way to Friday night, where the top of the table clash really did deliver in some quite torrid conditions. The Chiefs actually finally won out in the end, 27-15, but the result actually doesn't reflect quite how close the game was. Now, it started off really well with the Chiefs going in early through a try with Luke Jacobson, rather, their captain on the day. And that kind of initially gave a little bit of a worrying sign of how easily the Chiefs were able to get a roll on and go through the Reds. But they shored up their defense, that's for sure. After that initial little blip, they shored up their defense, and their tackling was great throughout the game. But it's quite telling through this, because it was for 10-10 at halftime. And then if you look at the final score, 27-15, there's not too many points that was in that game in either half, respectively. I do think that the best thing that the Reds did on night is show that they can defend. That is an extremely important aspect. And it is why they have been so successful. If you go back, if we'll talk about the game in a second, but if you go back and look at all the New Zealand teams, it's that they've got a pretty decent positive points differential, like positive negative points differential. Now, they're not all positive, but they are showing that even if they are losing and losing more games that they are winning, that they are defending well and they're not leaking too many points, unlike the Australian teams. So the Reds showing that they have that defensive game in, and the scramble, that's not desperation. That is just two good side finding gaps, holes, line breaks, and beating defenders, and they both did it. The stats are not too different in the attacking spectrum nor the defensive spectrum of the match. And so this is really, really important and really boding well for Les Kiss and his men. And yes, they took a loss, but I think the big talking point overall on the match, and really what cost them in the end, is goal kicking, where they weren't accurate. They didn't convert any of their 3 tries. At those 6 points, it would have been 21-27. Then if you'd taken any of the 2 or 3 penalties that were possibly kickable for the Reds throughout the game, 2 of them happened with Jeffrey Tumunga Allen in the bin, then all of a sudden becomes a 1-2 point ball game. So, and that, Tate McDermott wore that after the game and said, if we had been 15 men, we probably would have kicked for goal. But then because we went for line and wanted to soak up time. Personally, to me, that makes 0 sense. That's what he said in the post-match conference, and I don't think that could be misconstrued in any way. But personally, that makes absolutely no sense. Why would you, in really pouring, terrible conditions, opt to play against one of the best, opt to have minutes with a man down against one of the best attacking teams in the comp? That just makes no sense to me. And in the end, it really ended up costing them, because the Chiefs, when they got down there, they acknowledged the strength of the Reds' defense, like their own defense was really strong, and they took the 3, and that's how they, through the boot of DMAC, really progressed and carried on winning that game. And in the end, it was enough. So really good game. The Reds have way more in them from a game management perspective, but I thought both sides definitely showed that they deserve to be the top 2, 3, or first placed team. So cracking game. The next game on the Saturday, that was the Waratahs against Moana. And the Waratahs went back over to New Zealand after traveling home after already being in New Zealand. That made no real sense. Maybe it's a cost thing, who knows. But Moana, once again, second half heroes. They are absolutely killing it in the second 40 of every game. They grow an extra leg, and it doesn't hurt when one of your props is getting a hat-trick throughout the game as well. The Waratahs definitely started really strong again, like they did against the Hurricanes. The first half was a much better showing, and probably the best half of complete footy that I've seen them play. throughout the year. They definitely had their attack shape in phase play a lot clearer. There were a couple of players running into each other's channels or probably getting stuck behind one another, but overall, the phase play attack finally looked like it had some shape, and players were actually getting through that. And a big part of their success in that first half was the strength and showing of Joseph Akuso Sualihi, who absolutely tore up that first half of rugby. His attack was just what everyone has wanted it to be. And it's really, really good to see him finally hitting his strides. I don't know if 15 is his best position. I don't have enough information to say that any position is his best position, but just because he did well this weekend doesn't necessarily mean he should play there forever, because there were some kicking frailties on show. Positionally, I think he got caught out a couple of times, and then also running the ball. He can do that from 13. He can do that from the wing. He has any position in the backline gives you opportunities to have that time and space, really, if you're backtracking and covering the deep ball. So I do think that it's not a overall endorsement of his playing in the fullback, but he played very well. For Moana, they have made history. They've never won back-to-back games, and a big congratulations to Moana. Artie Sevilla led them admirably. He was absolutely pivotal once again. Patrick Pellegrini, he's a magician, really. He's on some red-hot form, and he's just able to control the team so nicely, put them in the right parts of the field, and then their systems under Tana Umanga and Stephen Jones, who's the former Welsh great international fly half, doing so well. Like, extremely impressive. So big congrats to Moana. You absolutely deserve that. You go on to play the Blues, I believe, in Auckland Derby. That's going to be absolutely epic. But they are showing that they have the systems in the forwards as well as their set piece to truly be able to be a threat. And they have a few players still to come back, like Sione Havili, I think it is, or Talitui. They're number 7. They do have, no Miracle Failangi either. They do have players that they can continue to pressure the breakdown, and that's really what broke the Waratahs in the end. So extremely impressed. They are going to continue to go and build on this form, and they deserve to, because they're doing absolutely awesome. So that is a big win to them. Congratulations. Now, unfortunately, I didn't actually catch too much of the following game, which is the Crusaders and the Fijian Drua, but it really is another nail in the coffin for the Fijian Drua's season. They do have, I think, 4 or 5 more home games left on the calendar. They'd have to win every single one, and you'd have to think with a bonus point the way the middle of the table's looking now. You can't be going into the finals anymore with a really big negative, positive points ledger differential, as well as a lot of losses. So it is going to be really tough for them to get it. And I just don't really know what's happened, because the Crusaders went over there with a bit of a reshuffled side, and as many believe, or they think, that they're back to their old fantastic form. All of a sudden, the Crusaders go up, I think it's 17-0 into halftime or something or other, and then it isn't until much later in the game where Wanga scores one of the tries of the season from a kick return. Really good, showing some really good pace. That's kind of in loose, open, broken plays how the Fiji scored both their tries. But overall, the Crusaders were very dominant from the snippets that I did see, and also not to mention the fact that they did it away in trying conditions. With Sheifiaki, Sevu Reese, and George Bauer, all who have Fijian heritage, they would have been very happy to get that win over there. But nevertheless, Crusaders charge on. The Drua continue to struggle. I do feel sorry for Glenn Jackson and the team, but someone's got to lose, and this weekend it was the Drua. So good luck to them for the rest of the week, and heading into next weekend's clash. On the weekend, it was 4 games on Saturday. It was a lot of games. The next one was the Hurricanes hosting the Blues. This was a really good game from a technical perspective. Now, if you want to look at what scramble defense looks like, key breakdown battles, Duplessis Karifi was massive. He's really putting up his hand to be that number 7 for the All Blacks this season, and there's actually no reason not to. His carry meters are insane. His ability to get onto the ball and just his sheer brute force and physicality and aggression in the contact is just absolutely mega. He really led the side, along with Balin Sullivan, who's another player who has to be in the All Blacks conversation. I'm not saying he's on the radar, because there is still Geordie Barrett to come back. Quinta Pai is in awesome form. Billy Proctor's yet to come back. That's the position that he's keeping warm there at the Hurricanes. Then you've also got Anton Leonard-Brown, who's currently got a bit of an injury niggle, so we'll see how that goes. And Rieko Ioane, of course. So I'm not saying that he's in the All Blacks. I'm just saying that he is an absolute point of conversation when you're getting into that, because he's coming to the ripe age. I think he's about 26, 27. So he's getting into that age where centers really begin to hit their straps. So that's really exciting. But I think the headline of this game was that the Blues won that game through the boot of Beauden Barrett. He is world class. So many GOAT memes and GOAT postings going around. He really is one of the best All Blacks of all time. His banana kicks were epic. His kicking off the tee really kept them in the contest. And just his ability to assess the game. And it feels sometimes like the game moves in slow motion around him, because he just has so much time always. And he's lightning quick. So everyone else looks like they're stuck in the mud or in slow-mo. Really, really good game. This was a game that the Hurricanes would have loved to have clinched, because now they're still sitting outside of that top six, and they're still sitting a little bit a ways down there. And for the Blues, this could be the start of their return to being able to make a charge for the finals, because they are going to have to string some wins together before they either throw in the towel, or whether the season calls it quits. So they're racing the clock to be able to get a lot of points, but nevertheless a really good win. And then the final game for the weekend is the Western Force claiming their win just before the bye week against the Highlanders. And this was a really gritty win. And I think there was a lot of positives, and you can see the building blocks that Simon Cron has been putting into the team. The Highlanders on the other side were really impressive with their strike plays. Jonah Nareki, it's a real shame that Caleb Tangitau got injured early, because he would have been a great asset to have in some of those moments when the Highlanders broke the line early. And that's what happened. The momentum was with the Highlanders very much so early in the first half. And it wasn't until a little bit later that the Force really started to pluck up their momentum and courage and go back at the Highlanders and be able to captivate that momentum and energy. It was a forward-dominated performance, really, from the Highlanders, despite the back scoring. That's what they do. The forwards really went to town, especially at set piece, where they really dominated the Western Force. But I do think that leadership for the Western Force throughout the side, whether it was Darcy Swain calling the lineouts, whether it was Ben Donaldson and Nick White in the halves, and then you're getting out to Hamish Stewart, who's really that eyes and ears for the Western Force. It's extremely impressive, and I'm really happy that they got that win. But there are some issues on when they're having to defend a counterattack. That really, really hurt them on several times against the Highlanders, and they're going to come up against much stronger sides, because they're heading into clashes against the Hurricanes, against the Blues, against the table-topping Chiefs. So it's going to be really crucial that Simon Cron goes away over this bye week. They deserve that. They absolutely deserve. They got the win. Really impressive. Well done. But they're going to have to really fix that and work on that over the bye break. And that's gotten down to the coach, Simon Cron, and then the players to implement it the week leading into the Hurricanes clash, which is the first game that they have when they come back. Big raps on Ben Donaldson for this game. I felt that he has a tendency sometimes to go out of games, but then he stayed in the game the whole time and really did his best to be able to control momentum. He said he was nervous for the final couple of 10 minutes. I don't blame him, because it was really touch and go then. I was hoping they weren't going to choke. But the biggest sticking point that I have for this game is the fact that they didn't do enough with the red and yellow card that the Highlanders suffered. They really need to be able to put teams to the sword and then go back at them and to be able to take them out of the game. And there were just parts like the maul that the Highlanders were able to successfully disrupt, and also that they shifted it to space too early without earning the right to go wide. So that's just going to take a little bit of time. They were missing their outside center, Theo Tompkinson, who was also a former Highlander as well. Nevertheless, it will be a really good opportunity for them to be able to go on and claim the win. So good on them. Congratulations. And I hope that they continue to love their rugby and to enjoy the break. So now we're going to jump into the analysis.
So this piece of analysis is looking at the Western Force attack against the Highlanders when they're down to just 14 men, with Sean Withy, their captain, in the sin bin. Now, the thing to note with this attack is that the Highlanders are one of the best defensive sides in the competition as far as dominant tackles go. So the fact that they're getting dominant hits on the Force here is nothing out of the ordinary, nor is it unexpected between these two sides, because they've been doing it all season. But what I think is the main thing to notice here as we roll on is where the Force start, which is just outside the 22 with a first carry well into the 22, and then where they end up. It's also really important to note at how and where the Force are attacking. They're going very much side to side, and they're not having anyone to actually straighten. They're a full complement here, so they do have the ball runners that they need to really get over the ball and to get over the gain line, but yet they're failing to be able to capitalize on the momentum that they generate, and that's due to the position of their ball carriers, as well as the effectiveness of their clean. Eventually, the Highlanders be able to put pressure on their breakdown, and then here we see it results in a penalty after several phases, which just goes without showing any sort of reward in the form of points.
Ma'u goes in and wins the penalty.
If we just stop here for a second, the Western Force have worked themselves into the center of the park, with Ben Donaldson calling his forward runners around the corner. They want to attack that open edge, which is going to force the Highlanders to fold aggressively, and that is where the Force have the opportunity to straighten, go over the gain line to catch defenders who are actually late at arriving at their position in defense. What happens in this phase that follows, though, is the Force actually have the numbers over to be able to attack this effectively, but they go passively behind the play instead of going flat to Matt Greeley here. They go out the back to Hamish Stewart, and this allows Jonah Nareki, who's really not in a position to make any sort of dominant hit on Matt Greeley, nor is Talia on his inside. Instead, Jonah Nareki is just able to use his speed to sprint through and shut down the space and time of Hamish Stewart, and this actually catches them the furthest back behind the gain line that they've been. Thankfully, Carlo Tizzano is willing to be able to carry forward and to be able to get them some forward momentum. This is a good jing from Nick White here, but unfortunately he drops the ball and it actually staunches momentum entirely.
Running through the early stages, therefore White, Donaldson.
Yet again, Carlo Tizzano puts up his hand and gets them back over the gain line. This is where the game drivers really need to be able to attack flat. And Marley Pierce, being willing in this opportunity, is really good, but he just hasn't been able to hit the ball flat enough. And if he had attacked close to the ruck, then he would have been in with a little bit more yardage post that contact. It's just about acknowledging ebb and flows of momentum, rather, can carry a side over the gain line and where you're attacking. The Western Force players are definitely willing. They're picking out the spaces like Hamish Stewart here on either side of Lasanga, but there's just not enough follow through, and they're actually not enough bodies on their feet to be able to make this move effective, and there it goes in and results in a penalty, which is a real shame because that is one of the opportunities that they really needed to capitalize on. And the Western Force need to be able to identify how and when to attack with momentum and to go over the advantage line, to play flat at the line. It's something that Ben Donaldson does quite well, but he also needs to be able to pick out when it's just as simple that we just have to be more direct. And yes, it may cost more bodies up and on their feet to be able to hit more rocks, but nevertheless, it is really about creating the space on the flanks, which is something the Brumbies do so well, because even though they might not be getting the most pay out of it, like this is space out wide, they do it anyway to be able to suck in defenses and lull them into a false sense of positivity. Here, the Western Force are going side to side too often, and they really do need to be able to consolidate and pick out where the weak defenders are, which is something the Force have really struggled to do here, even though the Highlanders are a player down.
That's a wrap for another week. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed your weekend of rugby. I thought it was absolutely stellar. The result between the Chiefs and the Reds, that only makes the competition better. The result for the Waratahs, that was awesome for Moana. Historical moment for them, getting back-to-back wins, but nevertheless a little bit of a talking point for Australia's largest union of rugby. They're going down in quite an emphatic fashion, not to mention the Western Force win over the Highlanders to then head into the bye. It was just cracker all in all. Don't forget, guys, like, subscribe. It does me a huge favor, continues to grow the channel, and I will continue to see you guys here on Off the Rock. And until next time,